Hi, it's Sheridan from the Training Designers Club, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. We've been having discussions in the VIP community recently about virtual training. Now, obviously, this is something that has been happening now for a good 5 years. I know lots of people adopted it before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, it does appear to be a regular part of the training mix for most L&D professionals, but not all. So if you're not used to doing virtual training, you may feel that you're behind the curve, but don't panic. You're absolutely not on your own because, not everybody has gone down that road. So it can still feel a little bit scary if this is new to you. But the great thing is, if you're coming to it now, is a lot of the little glitches have been sorted out. When we all took to it in 2020 and 2021, everybody descended en masse on Zoom, and credit to Zoom, it evolved really quickly. Teams was not great, but Teams is now a much better platform for running your virtual training on. But still, most freelancers still prefer to use Zoom rather than Teams. And one of the things that we love to do on our webinars is obviously keep people engaged. There are lots of ways that you can do that. They don't all have to be tech-based, and there are things on the website. I've got 3 or 4 short videos, webinars that explain how you can keep your virtual training interactive without having to go off platform, without having to use a load of techie solutions. Now, they were recorded 4 or 5 years ago, but they still ring true today. So don't stop yourself from doing virtual training just because you think you have to use loads of sophisticated tech. You absolutely don't. There are lots of things that we can do without involving tech at all. That said, there is sometimes an expectation that we will be doing things other than just listening and talking and using the chat. For a very short session, that's absolutely fine, by the way. Putting people in breakout rooms just to talk amongst themselves is also very, very popular. But if you're not using a tech producer, you obviously want to keep things quite simple. And we all mourned the loss of Jamboard. The Google Jamboard was just the easiest, simplest thing to use. You just put one link in, everyone could log on. You didn't need to create an account. It was free, it was easy to use, and it did 80% of what we needed to do. It provided people a virtual whiteboard where we could put people in groups, or people could just add to it on their own. And then, of course, Google took it away. Very, very sad day. And we still miss it. We still miss Jamboard. But I've been having a play just directly with the Zoom whiteboard. And I'm delighted to tell you that it has really, really come on with what it can do. It does everything a Jamboard could do and a little bit more. And of course, it's free with your Zoom subscription, so it doesn't cost you any more. And the beauty of it is that all your participants in your meeting can just access it immediately. They haven't got to go clicking on links, getting lost, closing the wrong thing down, which is one less thing for you to worry about as a virtual facilitator. So in this session, I'm just going to give you a very rough and ready guided tour of Zoom whiteboards and the polls and quizzes that you can use. Zoom does have other features. I am not setting myself up as a Zoom expert. I'm absolutely not. But I just thought it would be handy for you to have a look and see what is available to you, and to have a little bit of reassurance, really, that if I can do it, chances are you can do it. Okay, so here we are at the main page, I suppose, of Zoom. I tend to use Zoom through New Zenler now for most of my stuff, so I don't often come directly into Zoom, but I'm guessing most of you do. So this should be familiar to you. And before we actually open up a Zoom meeting and look at the different tools that we can use in that, I just thought it was useful to go through some of the things that are here. So I'm not going to go through all of these things down the menu here. But there are a couple that I think we need to look at, bearing in mind the question that was raised. So the first is obviously to look at whiteboards, because Zoom whiteboards have really, really come on. I mean, they are almost identical to Jamboards now. So And what's brilliant about the Zoom whiteboard is that you haven't got to send links in chat and risk losing people. The Zoom whiteboard just opens up. If you're running a webinar or a virtual session, you can click on whiteboards, before you've opened any meeting, and you can create a whiteboard in advance. So there's loads and loads of templates that you can use. You might prefer to just do something yourself, because I think if you use a template, you can end up being a little bit bound by the template. And if it doesn't fit your needs exactly, you end up trying to manipulate what you want to do to fit the thing that's already there. But it's definitely worth having a little look at these things. I mean, if nothing else, let's have a look at this one. So this is just a general whiteboard if you want to get people's ideas. So let's use this. So it's got little instructions here, which you may or may not want. So let's think about what our brainstorm session might want to be. So we can edit this. So what's the biggest challenge with virtual training for the audience? So that is our thing here. And then obviously you've got some sticky notes already in place, so you can talk through in your webinar how to actually use the sticky notes. And just like with the Google, the Jamboard, all the menus are down here. So if you wanted to put some titles in there, or some pictures in there, or some diagrams in there, you could do. But we'll leave it really basic for this one. And then there's obviously, to help people annotate as well, they can just choose these stamp things. Now up here at the top, we've got page 1 of 1. So as we've said, page 1 is for the audience. Let's do a page 2. So can I duplicate this page? Yes, I can. So we'll duplicate that page. So now I can put for the facilitator. And now we have 2 pages on our virtual whiteboard, and I'll show you how you can access that later. I don't need to do anything with it. It exists. Just before we leave this, if you're not familiar with this menu tool, it's definitely worth taking the time to have a play. And that's the great thing about going on to play in whiteboards without having to open a meeting or anything like that. So this is always useful. This always takes you back to the mouse. I've got caught out a number of times when I've been typing something and then you think, oh, I just need to go actually control something on the whiteboard or go into the chat, and it's really, really hard. So this just brings you back to your mouse being a mouse. We can use the pen, obviously, so you can use your highlighter, you can actually write with things. We tend to not use that, don't we, because it can be a little bit messy. But if we wanted to, you can just use the pen like that. Always go back to the mouse, otherwise you lose track of what's going on quite quickly. You can add shapes if you wanted to. So if you wanted to put this in, for example, you can just do that, and then you can add it like so. Again, go back to the mouse. The line, so the text, if you want to type something in, that's easily enough done. Go back to the mouse. I don't think we're going to be using equations. Obviously, if we want to add more sticky notes, you add your sticky note, you just pop it on the whiteboard, and then you can type in. And this is the sort of thing that you need to make sure your participants know how to do. So it can be worthwhile doing a little 5-minute video demonstrating the tools and sending it out before you run your webinar. And obviously if people are familiar with it, they don't need to watch it, but if they aren't familiar with it, it's going to help them get the most out of your session, and of course remind them that they need to join on a PC or laptop, not on their phones, because they will really struggle to do this sort of thing if they're on the phones. So we can comment on things. I've never used that function, but maybe I can add a comment here. So if we don't want it to get too busy, and just add the comment on. That's quite nice, isn't it? So we can look at those comments later. Put a frame around it if you want to. Templates we looked at before. You can add stickers. So this is a nice way for people to upvote things maybe. So, everybody put 3 ideas on the board, and then just you can go along and you can add ticks to the ones that you like. And under more, you can add a mind map, you can add a table, which is quite nice. You can embed content. So if you've been impressed by people who use things like Mural and Miro, and maybe they have a YouTube video or something, so you can actually do that on this now as well. All sorts of different things that you can do. And once we've finished setting up our whiteboard however we want it, I think we just use the arrow right up in the top here to go back. And you can see that that whiteboard is now here on my list of whiteboards. Here's one that I did yesterday when I was having a little play. So we'll have a look at both of those later. So just going back to the main menu down here and getting things set up. Obviously, if you don't want to use one of their templates, and I'm guessing most of the time you probably don't, you just go to a new whiteboard. Wait for that to open up. It's giving you these little shortcuts that you can do. And here you can set up a blank whiteboard that can have anything on it that you like. For some reason it's gone to the pen, so I'm just going to go straight to the mouse, otherwise I'm going to end up scribbling all over it. So what we can do here is, first things first, let's just change the background colour. So let's just make it white, and let's get rid of the dots. So nothing there, makes it completely blank. So now we have a completely blank whiteboard that we can do whatever we want with. So what I might want to do is give this a title. Let's just call it something really bland, really. Best icebreaker questions. So we can make that a bit bigger because we want it to be obviously a title. So make that nice and big. And we can just leave that as a completely blank board. If I wanted to put categories up there, for example, I probably could. I've noticed down here that we can add a table. So let's see what happens with that. If I have to import one, if I can just put one on there. Look at that. Just click and on it went. So I can say here, for people who know each other, don't know each other. We can perhaps add to this. Oh, just click that. Click the little plus there, look. For large groups. Just leave it like that. So what we can do then is I can stretch. It looks like you can only stretch from the right hand side. I'm trying to stretch it into the middle. So if I move the whole thing over, stretch it out that way. And then you can see these little tabs here. I can probably just move it along as you would a table in Word. Let's move that a bit smaller. Okay. So I can increase the font, obviously, if I want to. I can make it centered. Text align center. Center. I'm just faffing around now because this is what you end up doing, isn't it? So now they are obviously headings. And then what I can probably do is extend this. I've just used the mouse to scroll out there. So make that nice and big. And then this is a lovely table then that you could use to get people to use their text tool and just type in when you wanted to share this. So there's lots of things that you can do in advance. So you haven't got to go with the templates. You can set up your own. You can leave it really basic, or you can put something quite complicated on there. And if I just go to another page, you can see at the bottom there, I can add a page. So I'm going to add a second page just to show you what we can do on this one. So if I wanted to upload a diagram, for example, so let's say that we want to use that one, and we're going to put that on a whiteboard. So there we go. So what I can then do is I can pop that over there, and then I can suggest, potentially even make that a little bit bigger, and then we can ask people to write their things against each part. And to make it even easier, I can just add some lines if I wanted to do that. Okay, so that should be saved. There we go, just change the colour. So that is now a brand new whiteboard made from scratch. So we'll just name it so we can find it more easily. And then if I just go back to whiteboards, it takes me back to where I was before, and you can see that it's there now on that list. So when I go into my meeting, I can choose any of these whiteboards that I've already set up. Going further down, another thing that it's really easy and simple to use, particularly in a webinar or a short virtual session, is asking people to complete a survey. So if you want to set up a quick poll, we go over here, so click here to create a survey or poll. I'm guessing a survey is, more of your evaluation form, I'm guessing. Something to play with. Poll or quiz, we'll create that. So it's taking you on a tour, so you can have, so this can just be a simple icebreaker question. Which best describes, so we can be, okay, so that will do. So we're giving people a single choice, and that's what we're going to do with that one. Now what's new is that we can now add questions to the same poll. So if there was a follow-up question, if you notice here as well, we've got required, shows drop down and create break. I'm going to have to play with that separately. I would probably not make them as required because that's going to hold you up. If one person is struggling or has temporarily stepped away, you're not going to be able to close the poll down. So I wouldn't make them recommended. Required, sorry. So that's that. So I'm now going to hit save. And I've now got that poll. We can also do a quiz. So if you wanted to do a little quiz at the end of the session, for example. So if you do need to test understanding, this is something that you can do. So I've chosen matching here. And I'm just going to keep this, I'm not going to make you watch me type, I'm just going to put these in briefly, and then we can see how that looks. Okay, so I've added 3 different types of questioning. They're not good questions, it's just to look at the 3 different types. So we have a multiple choice here, we have a written answer, and then we have a ranking here, which was another option that we had. I'm going to toggle make it a quiz. I don't know why, I don't know what the difference is, but I'm toggling make it a quiz. And I'm guessing we'll save. Always good, isn't it? So we'll save that into my surveys. So now I have my quick quiz. I have my my poll here. I'm not going to go to surveys at the moment because I think we've got plenty. Because when you're running a webinar, particularly if it's only an hour, yes, we need to keep people engaged and involved in the session. It's important that we give them things to do, but we also have to be mindful that people do want time to think, reflect, and you can still do a lot in chat and in breakout rooms as well. People do love to just get together. So if you've got the opportunity to put people in a breakout room for 10-15 minutes with a really juicy question, that also adds a lot of value to the session. So you don't always have to be doing it on PEP. So they're the 2 main things, and you can set these up beforehand if you're going directly through Zoom, which is brilliant. So what we're going to do next is look at what actually happens in the meeting. So how do we access these things? How do we save them? And just how to get the best out of them, really. Okay, I've opened a Zoom meeting, and it's a bit weird because I'm having to use 2 different cameras, one for the Zoom and one for the recording. So I hope that's not too distracting, but now we are in the Zoom meeting. And I wanted to do it this way because now you can see all of my controls and what I have here. We're familiar with chat, we can bring up the chat. If you want to share your reactions, you can do that here. Obviously you share your screen this way, and all of these things you can set up in advance. So particularly with your sharing screen, I keep it on all participants because I tend to only work with VIP members and I trust them, and sometimes we want to share screen and we want to have a look at what each other's doing. If you're running an open webinar, you perhaps don't want other people to be able to start randomly sharing stuff. So in which case you probably want to make it that only you can do that. I always keep that one as well, so I have the right to override if I want to. So that's that. The AI companion, if you've got that turned on, that will create a summary of your meeting. It doesn't record the meeting unless you ask it to. So that's handy as well, I think. But what we're going to look at is more here. So I'm going to click on the more button. So this is where we can record to the computer or to the cloud. You can add captions, and quite often you'll see people will add captions to your video, and that's absolutely fine. You can set up your breakout rooms. That's something that we can look at separately. And here we have polls and quizzes. So if I click on polls and quizzes, you can see it automatically links to the polls and quizzes that I've already created. So if I want to launch this quiz, so both questions come up there. So when everybody has answered the poll, you end the poll. And when you've got responses, which obviously I haven't, you can share the results. And then the results will be shared on screen for everybody who is there. So probably what I will do is do this in an actual meeting so that you can see how that looks. And then when everyone's looked at the results, we stop sharing and then close that down. So that's really easy to do, I think. Let's have a look at the whiteboard. So let's have a look at existing whiteboards. So again, it will link to the ones that we've already created. So you can see here, that's the one that we just set up. So if I want to share that one, how do I want to open the board? So yes, I want people to get involved in it because I want them to actually type on it. And this is great because it does away with all of those messy separate links and people saying that they haven't got access to it and how do I do this? Everybody can see it automatically. So it's page 1 of 2. And you can just switch to page 2 of 2. That's the one that we messed about on. So if you wanted to put people in breakout rooms and say, right, I want 6 of you to think about the challenges of virtual training for participants, 6 of you to think about the challenges for facilitators, what we would do is we would put people into breakout rooms. So you can put them into 2 breakout rooms. I usually assign automatically just because it's quicker, unless you have people to help you or you particularly want people to go in particular rooms. And when you're running your own virtual sessions, if you want to do that, don't be embarrassed to say, I'm just going to need a minute to set these rooms up properly. So take the time to just maybe stand up, have a quick stretch, or have a sip of water, or whatever it is you're doing, because I just need a moment to do this. It's going to feel like it takes forever to you, but it's not really. And people are not going to mind just having a minute's break. There's also this option, obviously, to let participants choose their room. So again, if that's something that's appropriate, let's think about, we've identified 3 key challenges, go and work on the one that's most appropriate to you, then people can do that themselves. So you just create the room, but before you send them into rooms, actually, that you need to give them their instruction. So that's when you go to your whiteboard, you share your whiteboard, and you will say, so if you're in room 1, I need you to work on page 1 and think about the challenges for the audience. If you're in room 2, you need to switch and show them how to do it, go to page 2 and work on page 2. And this is when you can explain all of the different tools that they have. You can make the whiteboard bigger down here so people can move around and see what's happening. And I would keep it simple. Ask people to either use the text tool, but that can come up at different sizes. So people don't really necessarily know how to do that, but all the information's there. So, you know, if they're reasonably tech savvy, it shouldn't be too difficult. So I would stick with text, or I would stick with post-it notes. And the great thing with the post-it notes, of course, is that you can move them around. So maybe you've got another activity later when we've identified the challenges, and you say, so which ones can we prevent by doing some work up front? Which ones might we have to be aware of on the day? So it allows you to move things around and be a little bit more manipulative with it rather than just text. So when we are finished, we just close the whiteboard and it will be saved, which is great, isn't it? Just going back to it, you can see the ones that you've shared in the meeting, your whiteboards, all whiteboards. So nobody can see this, by the way, while you're routing through. So if you've got stuff for different clients on here, it doesn't matter. Nobody can see it until you actually choose it and open it. And when the exercise is finished, we just close the whiteboard. It will automatically be saved, which is great. We like that. One less thing for you to worry about. And if you wanted to just open a new whiteboard, you know, say there's a great discussion going and you say, actually, let's just capture these ideas quickly. It wasn't in your plan. So you can share a new whiteboard if you just want to capture something in the meeting. So again, the exact same tools are here. It's a blank whiteboard. There's nothing on it. Yep, so you can change your whiteboard colour if you wanted to. I don't want any dots on it. So these are all the different things that you can add. So have a little play with the various things that you have in whiteboard. And then when we're finished, if you see the export there, you can save it as a PDF, as a picture, which is probably the best things to do. But it says here, we're waiting for followers. Obviously, there's no one else in this meeting. But if people were in the meeting, they would automatically be added to this and they could just do whatever it is they needed to do. So I'm going to close that down. So I think we'll leave that here for now. I hope that's been helpful. I realise that I am not an expert in this, but I hope it's given you a little bit of confidence to have a play and have a look at all the different features that Zoom has already built in to just make your virtual training that little bit easier and less stressful, because when you're facilitating, that's what you want to focus on, isn't it? You don't want to be focusing on making all the tech work, and Zoom has really come on in respect.